I would also like to say it's very intimidating debating someone who's wearing a gun, and further intimidating when you meet other sheriffs from around the state who come in with as reinforcements wearing guns. So this is the most intimidated I have been since the campaign began. I'm for it for a real simple reason. One, it works. I don't know why it works. I don't know why water quenches thirst, but it works. Medical science has proven that. Sanjay Gupta, who's kind of the doctor for all of us, was against it 2 years ago. But after a lot of research, and if you look at the show Weed that he did for CNN, he said, you know what, I was wrong. It worked. And it worked for a lot of people, a lot of really sick people. Unfortunately, our legislature is made up of a bunch of people who are more interested in the next election than their next door neighbor. Our sheriffs are the politicians I think we all respect the most, because they're the politicians that actually go out there and get something done every day. And that's why we trust them. And that's why we trust them. The politicians in Tallahassee wouldn't even have a forum like this after being sent all that way. So because they wouldn't do it, I thought, you know what? You can't sit still and know something should be done and do nothing. They all have an obligation to do something.
Okay, but why did you do it? I'm sorry to interrupt your 4 minutes.
The reason I did it is, I feel like I got Candy Crowley over here, but...
Whoa.
That's good, that's a compliment.
I thought that the hardest thing in the world would be have your husband looking for Candy Crowley.
I did it because I've seen it work twice. My father had cancer. He was a law and order guy. Don't smoke marijuana, don't do drugs. He had cancer, unbelievable pain and anxiety, no appetite. We said, Daddy, look, what do you have to lose? I mean, you're really, literally at the end of life. And he did it, and the pain was gone, and appetite back, and anxiety. My brother's a C6, C7 quadriplegic. If he took the medicine the doctors want him to take, he'd be taking 7 Xanax a day. 1 Xanax will put a thoroughbred down. 7 makes him comatose. His pain is unbearable. The spasms uncontrollable. With marijuana, the pain is gone and the spasms gone. So I'm doing it, you know, really in memory of my brother's suffering and his legacy of suffering, and I'm doing it because I've watched it work. And it works, and that's why I'm doing it for my brother Tim.
Okay, thank you. Sheriff Nick.
Thank you, John. And before we start, I want to thank you for your comments about the sheriffs, because I can't agree with you more. We will come out, and I wish our legislative body would sometimes take a stand too. So thank you for recognizing that. Sheriff Bill Formell is over here with me today, the Charlotte County Sheriff. And Bill, I want to thank you for everything you do every day, working with me and making sure our communities are safe. And I want to remind John, he may not remember, I did get a letter from John some few years back. He may not remember, it was about 3 weeks after my daughter demolished my pickup truck. And so, so anyhow, we got it resolved. Bernie Walsh, I don't know if Bernie's here. Thank you, Bernie, for helping get it solved. I do want to say, I want to thank John for coming here and being part of this, and welcome to our beautiful county of Sarasota, Florida, Sarasota County, Florida.
The love fest is over. Why
it is. My 4 minutes start now. But I do want to give him credit for something he's passionate about. We have something in common. And I don't talk about it often, but I'm a passionate person, so people know that. And I have a sister that I lost. And I lost a sister to breast cancer. And I don't talk about that often. I get emotional, so bear with me. But I watched my sister go through pain and suffering. And I watched my sister be surrounded by a group of medical professionals that prescribed her with medications to ease her pain and suffering, legal medication. And so that was hard up until the time that she passed. They were great doctors. Looking back on this, if I believed that marijuana could help Barb to make her feel better, but with no negative effects on this community, I'd be sitting here with John right now supporting him. Let me be clear about something here today. I am not a doctor. I can't say if marijuana can work as medicine or not. This is not a moral argument for me. This is not a political argument for me. I personally believe that if this amendment passes, there will be negative consequences, and they will be significant. We cannot fool ourselves to believe into thinking there's only good that is going to come out of this amendment. This amendment, as I'm probably sure you all know, and I'm sure John will address it, is very vague and very broad. I believe with this amendment, when the law is going to affect, we are going to mirror the states of Colorado and California. Three main concerns as your sheriff. One, our children are going to have much easier access to pot. Secondly, crime will increase in this community. And thirdly, our quality of life will be negatively affected when this amendment passes and goes into it. Our tourism will be affected, our beaches will be affected, and our real estate values will be affected, as well as our health and safety and security of this beautiful community that we live in here today. Speaking on children very quickly, the way this amendment is written, children under 18 do not need parents' permission or consent to purchase medical marijuana. Pot nowadays is as much as 3 times more potent as it was 20-some years ago. That's a different era of smoking grass. This is an addictive drug now. 3 times more potent than some 20 years ago. Teens using pot for the first time can become addicted. Don't let anybody tell you marijuana is not an addictive drug. It is. Studies show that 1 in 6 of teens who use it will become dependent or addicted. I'm going to ask you now, is this amendment worth all the risk to put our children into effect if this amendment goes through and for their ability to get their hands on pot? Second thing, if this amendment passes, I can assure you crime will increase in Sarasota County and throughout the state. This is a cash business. Since it's federally illegal, the sellers cannot deposit the cash into the banks, and you can't purchase it with credit cards.
Okay,
Cash
your time is up. We're trying to really on schedule. Question for both of you. 1 in 3 adults admit using to marijuana. 5 million use it almost every day. The question, you started to talk about it, but the real question is it addictive? Mr. Morgan, let me go first.
I think the answer is yes. It is addictive.
Okay, Sheriff Knight.
It scares me.
Okay.
We have homelessness now. Wait till this passes.
All right, Mr. Morgan, marijuana is not medicine, so how can we call it medical?
Well, it's for medical purposes. It's for debilitating illnesses and conditions. What medical marijuana will be used for is for people like the sheriff's sister. You go to chemo wards all throughout the state of Florida, and you got people who are really, really sick and in distress. Nausea is the main problem with chemo. It's a poison. It's so toxic that it burns the skin. The pills that the big pharmaceutical companies have made up don't work. Medical marijuana does. When you're sitting there dying and fighting for your life, and nutrition is the main way that you stay alive and don't waste away, are we going to wait for the pharmaceutical companies to put a pill together? Now, by the way, the pharmaceutical industry knows it works. You know why they know it works? There's a pill called Mariuana that can be sold here in Florida. But the problem with Mariuana, like the problem with the chemo pill, it doesn't work. I don't know why it works, and I don't know why God put this plant into our earth for us. I don't know why he put aloe here to take care of sunburns, but he did. I'm not going to wait around waiting for the FDA to tell me what works and what doesn't. God's already told me what works, and it's medical marijuana.
And Sheriff Knight, you said that the campaign to legalize marijuana is misguided and or misleading. Explain.
Well, let me work off what John just said, is that, I would be much more comfortable if a scientist or somebody who understands drugs, like we have with the FDA, would approve of this, not in the willy-nilly fashion will come in here in Florida. And one thing that's for certain about God God put this on the earth for us, but God also put cocoa leaves for crack cocaine, and God also put the plants on the earth for opiates, for heroin. God also put criminals on the earth. And that, you know, some people will say against that, but you know what, come to my jail and you'll see some of the people you wish God did put on this earth. And so I would say is that I'm more relaxed knowing that the FDA is going to be involved, the federal government's going to be involved, and having scientists involved to look at something that says for sure if it is medically approved. And I have a full list of associations here that will go against this notion that it's medical.
Let me say, in my business, I take on drug manufacturers every single day. Every day. Big cases. Vioxx, you remember that? FDA approval. Fen-Phen, you remember that? FDA approval. OxyContin, you know about that? FDA approval. I've got a business with 20 lawyers that do nothing but go back and do the work that the FDA should have done in the very beginning. Drugs are killing people. 16,000 people die every year in America from OxyContin, approved by the FDA. Hundreds of thousands of children are hooked. By the way, you can get OxyContin if you're a child, and it hooks them, and it destroys them. And then it destroys millions of family members who watch their children literally disintegrate before their very eyes. Marijuana doesn't kill anybody. And let me tell you something. If it gets down to OxyContin or marijuana, it's like saying, do you want your daughter in college to drink beer or tequila? It's real easy for me.
Sheriff Knight, are you going to answer that, or would you like to tell?
Well, no, I agree with John. If the people in this room know what we've done here in Sarasota County under my leadership with the pain clinics and the pill mills, and that the doctors, my father-in-law's a doctor, and that, you know what, every profession has its bad apples. And when you get doctors who are bad apples and prescribe oxycodone the way that John's explained it being described, is that you get people addicted, you get people to overdose. Let's make no bones about this. When the dispensaries pop up all over Sarasota County, you're going to get a certain element of physicians to refer people to these dispensaries, and you're going to have the same similar type of problem as pill mills. It may not be oxycodone that they're crushing, smoking, or injecting, but there's going to be marijuana all over the streets of Sarasota County.
Let me go on, because I'd like to share something with you in the form of a question. It was a Christmas letter. In the California hills, there are small plots of weed growing all over where Henry lives. These plots are easy to see from the street. Unless someone complains, the cops look the other way, so it pays to stay on good terms with the law. You can post your prescription on a tree in front of your plot, and this is honored by most law enforcement. So in Sarasota, ladies and gentlemen, you can have chickens. Why not a marijuana plot? Do you see that it's going to go there if it's legal? This is still just medical marijuana in California. Sheriff Knight?
If this passes, you're not going to have growing in your back lawn. You're going to buy it out of storefronts and dispensaries. So you totally understand it. Let me show you a graphic of Anaheim, California. Anaheim, California has a population of over 320-some thousand. Our population is 390,000. Medical marijuana sold in California, 43 dispensaries. This is distribution of marijuana, medical marijuana, in Anaheim, California. That many people have chronic pain and suffering of medical marijuana in Anaheim, California.
Get to get the mic.
Get your mic.
This is from weedmaps.com. You go on weedmaps.com. This is what you'll find in Anaheim, California. Population 320-some thousand. 43 medical marijuana dispensaries that are in Anaheim, California. So you're going to get dispensaries throughout Sarasota County, a population of 390,000. where people go to get their medical marijuana. And I'll put this graphic up here if you want to look at it. Weedmaps.com, you can see where the dispensaries are at.
Well, let me address, should I address that? First of all, listen, we can only have as many dispensaries as the state of Florida allows us to have. One of the things we learned in our focus groups, and one of the great things about coming now instead of then, is we learned what happened in California and Colorado. What our focus groups told me before I put the language together was, loud and clear, we don't want to be California. We don't want to have homegrown or grown outside, and it's not part of it. But to be talking about dispensaries on every corner like they're food trucks is folly, because it's not true. It can only happen, you all are business people, many of you. Try to get a permit to move a wall in downtown Sarasota. Okay? Good luck. I've been trying to add an addition to my house in New Hampshire for 2 years. I almost have to sue to build. So, you know, it's a scare tactic by well-meaning people to say we're going to have these things on every corner. You can only have them if the Florida legislature enacts it, and if the governor allows it, and if cities and municipalities permit it. It's not going to destroy real estate values, just the opposite. In Colorado, real estate values have gone up, real estate business has gone up, and taxes have increased. So, and the argument about crime, Eric Holder, our Attorney General, 2 weeks ago said, listen, we're going to let all the rules go to allow for banks, because it is a federal law, you can't do it. But now our Attorney General has said there's not going to be an enforcement against banks for taking marijuana money. So by the time we get to our law here in Florida, that will be gone. And so the worry about crime is this. I've watched Colorado, I've watched Washington State, I've not seen Tony Soprano and company roll in yet. And so I'm not scared of it. I'm not scared of cash in a drawer in a store. If I was, I'd shut down every 7-Eleven in the state of Florida.
Okay, that was kind of a simplistic answer, but thank you anyway. Okay, Sheriff Knight, I know you're
I'm a simplistic
you're anxious to respond to that.
I would say that we wait until the federal government says that banks can take the cash. What's our hurry? Why are we going to risk our state? Why are we going to risk our crime rate? Why are we going to risk our quality of life? If that's the case, then let's wait for the federal government to say they will take the cash from these dispensaries, and there's hundreds of thousands of dollars stored in them. In the state of Colorado, I would dispute that. Let me give you the headline of an NBC News article last week that came from Marijuana Business Daily. This is a trade publication for marijuana sellers. Just reported NBC News last week that dispensaries in Denver, Colorado have a robbery and burglary rate of 50%. 1 of every 2 is getting robbed or burglarized. By comparison, liquor stores in Denver have a robbery or burglary rate of less than 20%. Sarasota County, Florida, our robbery and burglary rate is 16.7%. You would need over a 300% robbery and burglary rate for Sarasota County, Florida to match that. Also, in that same article that came from, that was an NBC News article. Here's the headlines. Robber gangs terrorize Colorado pot shops. This is a mainstream news public media outlet. This is not Fox News to the right or a Tea Party blog, but you know. And so this is mainstream news reporting facts. So for people who don't think that Colorado is under duress, I would beg to differ. All you have to do is do your research and you'll see differently.
Okay, let me go on to the next question. The question is, has marijuana always been considered harmful? And there was this great piece that I found, and it said, marijuana was commonly prescribed as a pain reliever in the U.S. until the 1930s, when its growing popularity caused such concern that the newly founded Bureau of Narcotics, Federal Bureau of Narcotics, reclassified it as a narcotic. The Bureau soon launched a decidedly unscientific campaign claiming that marijuana use provoked insanity, homicidal tendencies, and uncontrollable lust.
My wife's here, stay away from her.
The marijuana user, the girl asserted, became a fiend with savage or caveman tendencies. His sex desires are aroused and some of the most horrible crimes result. Well, we know that's not really true, but here's a really important question, I think, that as a result of that. Can you point to any respected scientific studies on the long-term effects of the use of marijuana?
Let me say first, here's how this law really came into effect in America. And this is the shameful part. There was a movie called Reefer Madness. Yep. Reefer Madness stood for the proposition that the Negro male would use marijuana to seduce the white woman, and that our country would be destroyed because of marijuana. That's the basis for the laws in America today. The basis for the laws in America today, their tenets are based in racism, pure, unadulterated hate and racism. That's how it got started. And then they said things like, you know, insanity and delusion, because at the heart of it, it was a bunch of white men running America, wanting to do what they wanted to do. And that's the law we have today. And it's disgusting.
I'm not going to use anecdotal information. I'm going to give you some facts. There is no scientific proof to say it does or doesn't. There is no scientific proof to say if legalized marijuana will help cure chronic pain and illness. There's nothing, no scientists, no medical experts have said it. You'll get a doctor here or there that'll say their opinion on it, but I have 9 respected associations that have not endorsed it and speak out against it. And I won't read them all off to you, you can do your homework. At the end of the day, it's not scientifically proven, it's not going to be controlled by the FDA, and when the dispensaries open in the state of Florida, we're getting more than we bargained for, and it's going to affect our quality of life.
It is.
And I want to make it very clear, I'm not unsympathetic to people who have pain and suffering, because I think about my sister every day. I'm here to talk about it from a sheriff's standpoint of crime. Look to Colorado, look to California. Come see me, I'll give you plenty of reason where to go look.
If you want to see the science, do 2 things. Go home today and download the story that Sanjay Gupta did called Weed. Go to your internet and look what's going on in Israel at the Hebrew hospital. The guy there for 50 years. Go to Colorado and look where these children who have these epileptic seizures that are so severe that these children are locked in their bodies for life. And this cannabis oil is releasing these children that haven't communicated with their families forever and are now riding bicycles and going to church. There is scientific basis for it. And the science is based on what works. We know what doesn't work. The pills that the pharmaceutical companies are selling to us at the tune of billions and billions and billions of dollars. I don't trust them because I litigate against them every day, and they're made up of crooks that are in it for themselves. And I don't trust the FDA. Let me tell you who I trust. I trust the cops, and I trust our doctors. And that's whose hands this is going to be in when it passes this November.
Trust me, rave dispensaries in Denver, because the Colombian drug cartel was in there, and the local law enforcement is powerless. We are going to have our hands full with this, and I am scared to death. I am not unsympathetic. I will tell you this, a couple stats that are statistics, not just some information. Less than 5% of the people prescribed are elderly. More than 80% are young adults. Only 10% have cancer, HIV, AIDS, or glaucoma. 90% are registered for less serious conditions, including headaches and minor arthritis. In California and Colorado, most registered users are white men between the ages of 17 and 35 with no history of chronic illnesses. This is what this amendment is going to do to our state.
And Colorado, 42, the average age is 42 years old. It's most used for pain and spasms. And here's the real number. There's only 100,000 people that has a medical marijuana card in Colorado. That's it. That's all. Now, in Florida, we're a bigger state, so the state of Florida estimates 300,000 or 400,000 people. This is not a bunch of people. But the statistics that he gives, that he's been given, are not accurate. And listen, we can all sit up here and pull statistics out. But I will tell you one thing about the Colombian cartel. If people ask me who's most hurt by this law, the Colombian cartel, who don't get their piece, and we get our taxes, and people who lock people up for profit. Not the sheriffs. We got a commercial jail system in the state of Florida that lock up our teens at a record pace. So the Colombian cartel doesn't. I know it's a scary word to say the Colombian cartel, because my God, they're busting down the doors of Denver. But they're the people who've been cut out. Why would they be? Listen, there's a lot more low-hanging fruit for the Colombian cartel to pick. I mean, they deal in billions, not thousands, and that's what it would be raiding a dispensary. It'd be like, the Colombian cartel is raiding, pawn shops in Florida. I mean, why?
Can you guarantee that? You can sit here and tell us today with this amendment, you can guarantee that the Colombian drug cartel will not come into Sarasota County, Florida. I won't have to deal with it. You can guarantee that.
Let me tell you something, Sheriff. I can guarantee you this. They're here now.
Show me, because I like to go get them.
We're off the coast of Florida. They're here now.
If you have the intel, can I get it from you? Because I like to go get them. Because I can tell you this, our crime rate in Sarasota County is down 38%, and I'm not going to sacrifice
it. Let's move on. Patients are legally entitled to an adequate warning of prescription drug effects, right? I mean, you're watching a TV show and it takes half the show to tell what's going to be wrong with you if you take this drug. Anyway, how can consumers receive an adequate warning of marijuana effects when there is no standardization and potency varies greatly from one plant to another?
Well, we know one thing. There's never been an overdose, a death overdose of marijuana ever. Alcohol kills somebody in America every 17 minutes. Okay? We can't guarantee that if you take OxyContin, you're not going to be hooked. You can almost guarantee you're most probably going to be hooked. At the end of the day, and it's because I'm in this business where I'm suing these pharmaceutical companies, and if you know what I know about them, the tobacco industry, I got a tobacco trial going on right now. You ever smoked a cigarette? You ever seen that brown stuff that comes at the end of the filter? You think it's tar and nicotine? It's not. You know what it is? The filter gets brown when it gets hot. And the tobacco industry wants you to look at that and see that so you think you're being helped. These are the people who are controlling the corporations and the drugs in our country now. Marijuana, the downside of marijuana pales with the downside of FDA-approved drugs like Oxy, Percocet, Darvocet, Xanax. It pales because one is a narcotic poison and one is an organic plant in nature.
Which is addictive. And
let me tell you something, chocolate's addictive. Just look at me.
But I'll say this, I have people bring that up to me about liquor in the liquor stores, and my answer is, so just because we have one addictive substance readily available, our community's ready to make a second addictive substance legal?
It's the lesser of two evils.
I hear some comments. Maybe we're going to get some questions in there. I understand that Representative Joe Saunders introduced a bill yesterday in the legislature of Florida to legalize marijuana, medical marijuana. I'm going to ask you, Mr. Morgan, wouldn't it make much more sense if that's going to happen, it was done by a law versus a constitutional amendment? I realize it's a legal question, but it's very hard to unamend the Constitution, don't you agree?
Well, it is, and the frustration I had is not that we didn't get a vote on it last year, but that we never had testimony. We never got to hear from the scientists from Hebrew Hospital. We never got to have Sanjay Gupta come and testify. We never got to have the citizens of Florida come in and tell how they have to break the law for their loved ones to have comfort and compassion. They wouldn't even take testimony. If you're sitting up there as our representatives and you're so afraid of the truth that you will not even allow there to be testimony, evidence, science, then God help us all. Ask yourself this question, unless you're running a big insurance company. What has your legislature done for you and your family in the last 10 years?
All right, who wants to
Nothing.
answer?
So guess what? We're going to take care of ourselves in November, and the only way we can do it is with a constitutional amendment.
Can I
Chair, of course.
I agree with you. I get so frustrated in Tallahassee, but I don't agree with this amendment, and I know what it's going to do for the community. If I judge it, and it's your program, can I read one article on the Newport Beach, California? It's quick, 30 seconds.
Okay.
Newport Beach, California, where legalized medical marijuana exists, legal marijuana. Today, a group of gunmen broke into the home of a local marijuana dispensary owner, zip-tied him, then dragged him into their van, burned him with a blowtorch, doused him with bleach, and severed his penis. Their motive was to get the man to tell him where he was hiding his cash from his business. That can happen here. Don't think it can't.
That can happen with a pawn shop. That can happen with a grocery store. That can happen in a dental office. That can happen wherever there's cash. And the thing about it, with all due respect to our sheriff, we're not going to be scared by those anecdotal stories. We're just not. Let me tell you something else can happen. Tonight, I'll tell you what I'm scared about. That's why I got 2 German Shepherds. I'm scared about somebody coming in my house with a gun. I'm scared of that. Listen, I stay scared shitless about everything.
You need to move to Sarasota County, Florida, because we have a great crime decrease.
I can't afford the property. I can't afford the real estate over here. My God, you have to be a multi-millionaire to live.
I saw when you drove up there. I drive a Suzuki. I drive a 2004 Suzuki. I saw the stretch limo out front.
See, he's got surveillance out there on that. Called home court advantage, baby.
Are you going to add a drive-through window so people can buy pot on their way from your office, and or is that going to be a campaign office for your employee, Charlie Crisp?
Mr. Morgan, you do not have to answer that.
I just want to thank the sheriff's spokeswoman for showing up here today.
I believe you are next.
Hi, Donna Barkham, Tiger Bay member. My question, and excuse my ignorance, but could you describe the difference between the law in California, the law in Colorado, and the current proposed amendment in Florida?
First of all, one thing we know is that Florida does not want, at this moment in time, the legalization of recreational marijuana. We know that. The last Quinnipiac poll in Florida found that 82% of the people of Florida want this. Cancer, ALS, doesn't strike political parties. The difference between our law and the laws that we found around the state, the country, is there's several. Number one, In California, places like that, you don't have to be a medical doctor to prescribe it. You can be an acupuncturist or a psychologist. The people of Florida don't want that. The people of Florida trust their doctors. Number two, we don't want anyone 21 years or age or under to be able to be an assistant or assisting someone who needs it. And the third and final thing is we want it to be grown, not homegrown, we want it to be grown and regulated. The sheriff will tell you, one of the great problems we have are these different strains of marijuana and the hallucinogenics that are laced through these bootleg drugs. And the people of Florida know it's out there. There's more harm being done to our citizens by bootleg and jacked up pot than all the problems we're talking about. So, and then finally, what we found in our focus groups is that we want this thing to be highly regulated, highly permitted, so there's not one on every corner. Florida wants it, but they don't want it to be a wink and a nod and the legalization of recreational marijuana. So there's two big differences. And it will be enacted. Since I am in Sarasota County, I feel like I'm the only Democrat in the room. I feel like Sidney Poitier and guess who's coming? We're but here's the good news for my Republican friends here today, including my wife. I mean, I'm married to a Republican, so she spends every waking election trying to cancel my vote. But she agrees with me on this. We have finally found something to agree with. But to give you comfort, this will be enacted most likely by a Republican legislature, House and Senate. They're going to lay the rules out. They're going to lay the rules out to grow it, sell it, license it, and tax it. And we've learned from California and we've learned from Washington State, and those lessons are going to serve us well and are going to help our sheriffs not have the problems that have been associated with some of these states.
Sheriff?
Quite a few quick things on that is, we may have a Republican legislative body, but there's going to be a huge amount of lobbying going on up there, I feel certain, in that the amendment is going to limit their ability to write that law and restrict the amendment. And I don't know constitutional law, I'm not an attorney, I'm not at that level, but I'm smart enough to know that the law that will be passed will mirror the amendment, and it cannot change the restrictions of the amendment that much. Secondly, we talk about polls. Polls are great in political campaigns, which is what's really, this has been going on, a $4.6 million political campaign. And I think you can see those polls change very quickly when people find out that children get their hands on this, and that we were waiting as sheriffs until the Supreme Court came out with their ruling, which was a close 4-3 vote, and I'm sure you've all read about that. And then the last thing that I would mention about that is people do want to trust their doctors, and I trust my doctor, and my father-in-law is a doctor. But there's always bad apples in every profession, and I can assure you that the doctors who are going to be courted into this dispensary business are going to be the same type of doctors that are involved in pill mills.
If you want to be worried about your children, be worried about the amount of Adderall that's being given to our children. I'm going to tell you something. I'm in the mass tort business. One day you're going to see, if you worry about children, you're going to see what Adderall has done to our children, the suicides and the havoc that's wreaked upon our children. Did anybody in this room ever use Adderall? I don't even know how you got out of high school without Adderall, but it doesn't seem like you can get out of first grade without Adderall now, all approved by the FDA.
All right, thank you. Sir, you have a question?
Is it on? Try it again. Dan's your turn. Just yelled out.
Hello.
There you go. You're on, Dan.
Okay, my name is Gabriel Hammond. This is my second meeting here at Tiger Bay. My name is Gabriel Hammond. This is my second meeting here at Tiger Bay, and this question is for Attorney Morgan. Is there any anecdotal evidence or academic studies that would suggest that if this were to pass, doctors would prescribe medical marijuana in place of the more harmful drugs like Oxycontin and other amphetamines?
No doubt about it, and I'll tell you who's getting ready to change that for us all right now is the NFL. The NFL now has 2 Super Bowl teams in 2 states that has marijuana. The NFL, if you read what they're saying about medical marijuana, what their doctors are saying is Would they rather have their players using medical marijuana or OxyContin? And so the evidence is there. Look, for the people who've used it, talk to them. Talk to them. Ask them. You know, I don't necessarily, I'm not a guy that has to go out and get studies by professional whores that are paid to tell us what we want to hear. We know what these studies are all about. I don't need some scientist to tell me that water quenches my thirst. And I don't need a doctor or a scientist to tell me that tequila won't quench my thirst. I just know it. There are certain things that we just know. And we can wait around and wait around and wait around. But talk to the people who risk their freedom every day. A young law student called me the other day to tell me that he drives to Tampa to buy marijuana for his mother, who has multiple sclerosis, is withering away, and he does it every time scared to death that he's going to get caught, arrested, and career ended. I don't need to hear from these experts. I need to talk to the people. I've seen my brother, and I've seen my father. And I know this, when my father was on Ativan and Xanax and all the drugs, you talk about insane, he didn't know if he was coming or going, he was laid up in fetal position. The first night I walked in, it was a miracle. He's sitting at the table, eating a pot roast, and he had these famous lines. John, this shit works.
We had to wait until your
Sheriff Nick.
As your sheriff, you know, I'm expected, I'm covered by the First Amendment, but when I wear my uniform, I have to keep things factual. And so I can't go into a long discussion about things that really aren't factual. And so I would tell you that, you know, the facts, if you want to know facts, I can give you facts, but the First Amendment doesn't protect the sheriff wearing his uniform. And so look at the facts and do your research and look over the smoke screen of the discussion.
All right, you have a question over there?
Hi, I'm Leslie Glass, and I'm just a mom. And we have not, we've had a lot of extremely emotional talk today about sick children and cancer patients. And speaking as a mom, I'd like to ask this room, how many people here would like to see their 12 and 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds smoking pot? Is there anybody here who would like to see that?
Well, you don't see it now. No, seriously.
How many people would like to see their 7-year-olds drinking beer?
I haven't asked my question.
I don't think anybody.
So I'd like to ask the sheriff to really talk about our teens and the impact that legal marijuana will have on our children in this area, and in this state.
And it scares me. My daughter goes to school at a local state university, I won't say where for not what people know where she's at. And I was visiting her, and it was all over the college campus. And she has told me that her friends who are around it tell her, as they try to invite her to do it, learned it at a younger age in high school. And the studies have shown that 1 in 6 of every child who starts to smoke marijuana would become addicted or dependent on it as they grow older. Remember one thing about this with the dispensaries of children being able to get it without the need for parental consent or permission. They can also get their hands on it from the caregivers who are going to be allowed to purchase it on behalf of the people they're caring for. And there's no restrictions on the caregivers who have access to this. They can be drug addicts, they can be convicted felons, they can be children themselves. So this is not legalizing medical marijuana, this is legalizing marijuana.
That's not true. I mean, listen, first of all, children cannot get this without parental consent. Parents can, that's just not true. That's factually not true. Parents can consent to their children using morphine, and they do. parents can consent to their children using oxy, and they do. But this lady who just spoke is doing us all a great disservice to be mixing apples and oranges. Listen, my children, and I've got 4 of them, I drug tested my children. They'd come home. If I suspected they might be using marijuana, I drug tested them. Nobody wants their children to be using marijuana recreationally. But to come in here and say, who wants our 13 and 14-year-olds to be smoking marijuana? If you can find one person that says yes, that's nuts. That's like saying, who wants our 16-year-olds to be drinking beer and tequila? Nobody. But you don't shut down the liquor stores over that. And so what I hope happens as this thing goes forward is we don't have hysteria and subterfuge and things that don't go to the root of the matter. Let me tell you something. People in this room have been sick. A lot of us haven't. A lot of us haven't laid in a deathbed. When you're laying in a deathbed or you're facing death with a terminal illness or an injury where you can't move, you're going to take it. If our dogs and cats were suffering, we'd give it to them. But we won't give it to our own loved ones. And so I hope that scare and fear and, you know, invoking our children, listen, nobody's more protective of their children than me. I got 4. The easiest decision in my life would be, who's got to die, them or me? That's the easiest decision in the world for all of us. But let's don't let that be a fear tactic that stops 400,000 people from getting relief day one.
Sheriff, do you want to answer that?
No, I think I had children, and that's our most precious commodity, and that's my biggest fear, is that don't be surprised. Facts are facts. Our kids are going to get their hands on it more readily available than the way they get their hands on it now.
Ask any high school teacher, in any high school, in any town in this country, and they will tell you that marijuana is easy for the kids to get. Every single kid knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who can get it. So I have to disagree with you, Sheriff Knight, when you say that legalizing marijuana will make it easier for the kids to get it. It's quite easy right now.
But does that make it right? Does that make it right?
It doesn't make using tobacco right, it doesn't make using alcohol right. In any of these cases, if they were legalized and regulated...
And that's why we're here conversing today. If the state wants to legalize marijuana, then we vote to legalize it.
The state wants people to smoke fewer cigarettes. And the state is doing a darn good job by taxing the hell out of it. There are a lot of few people in tobacco now because of the extra cost of the tobacco. I know, I've been there, I've done that. I smoked for 40 years.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have one more question.
Good morning, gentlemen. State Senator, former State Senator Mike Bennett. Good morning, John.
Hello.
I got to tell you something, John. It's pretty interesting. 6 years ago, I tried to introduce a bill. Okay, I couldn't even get a bill number to have it, so I can understand where you're coming from. And that was under your good friend Charlie Chris, by the way. Anyhow, that's another story. But Sheriff, in all honesty, and a serious question, I think that if you look at the poll, this situation's going to pass. Okay? Like it or not, I don't care. Is the Sheriff's organization working with the rule writers in Tallahassee to come up with the rules that would make you comfortable? I know you don't have to like the program, but just because the law statute passed, just because the constitutional amendment passes, that doesn't change the rulemaking.
You're right.
The rulemaking authority can keep the zoning act. For example, in Sarasota County, I think you have one bar that still has full nudity in the bar. The reason they don't have any more is because of local regulations and local permitting. So I'm hoping...
Hey, I'm not aware of that, Mike.
But it's the Sheriff's organization, the state of Florida, working with the rulemaking authorities right now in Tallahassee to anticipate what's going to happen with this.
You're right on target, and you're much more versed in the legislative process than I am. And like John was saying earlier, that process itself certainly would hope for improvement. And we were waiting, as Sheriff said, for the Supreme Court ruling on it for the 4-3 vote. Lots of comments from both sides of the decision-making process on that. But yeah, you're right on target, Senator. is that we are becoming engaged in it. Our fear is, very much like we have seen in the past, is that the law will be set up very broad-based and mirror this amendment. An example of that is we can't even get our bath salts, our K2 corrected in Tallahassee. And for people in here who follow that and see how deadly that synthetic marijuana drug is, when you see your Board of County Commissioners, my legal staff who's sitting over here, drafted a local ordinance, and the Board of County Commissioners passed an ordinance today to get that stuff out of the shops and get it away from our children. Something, thank you. And thank the Commissioners for doing that. And something like John said, we just can't get it done in Tallahassee.
I would suggest that the reason we didn't get it done is because my party, the Republican Party, didn't get in front of this and write the rules tight enough.
You're right. Like Georgia and Alabama is doing right now.
They allowed it under constitutional amendment, which we all know is probably the worst way to legislate. And so I'm hoping now that law enforcement in our state of Florida will get behind writing the rules, writing the regulations, where we can have it controlled, because it's going to happen.
You're right on target.
Ms. Brown.